our first question today is jealousy.
Thank you for bringing this up. I can't remember the last time I felt jealous, honestly. It probably happens more with friends than my romantic relationship. When I think about jealousy, it's like a fruitless emotion, and I don't give it the time, which maybe now I'm feeling like I should let it trickle in a little bit just to see what it has to teach me.
How much of the human experience is spent looping in these painful cycles just because we don't communicate? How can you just remain curious in all aspects of life and let that be the leading force rather than being restrictive or thinking that you can't have something because you're in long-term partnership? Jealousy, just like anything else, it's a choice. We can choose to tap into that energy, or we can choose something different. We can choose to be in competition with women, or we can choose to be in celebration with women. And we always have that choice in every situation, all the time.
Because as women, we're trained to compete with each other, and I'm sure that's where a lot of it comes from. And like that feeling that I had towards my partner was definitely like, does he like me more than her?
We're humans. Fear is a primal instinct of us.
Well, it's not wrong to choose fear. I don't believe. I think it's part of our human experience. I think that the higher vibration, the more growth-oriented choice, would be love. I think, do I intend to always want to come from love? Yes, but I don't think, I don't believe in making myself wrong if I do come from a place of fear.
Hey everybody, welcome back to my Libido Lounge podcast. I'm your host, board-certified sexologist, Dr. Diane, and I'm going to be introducing you to a few of my friends. We're talking today about how to keep your libido high and how to keep your libido high during the ebbs and flows of a relationship, or if you are between relationships, how to still stoke your own libido so you can still have all that juicy energy to put back into your work, to your life, to help balance your hormones, balance stress, and more. So this is our third and final edition of this round of the girlfriend episode. So you will meet my friends again in a second. And we will do more girlfriend episodes here in the future, several months down the road. So please do subscribe so you make sure to stay abreast of when we release new episodes. All right, everybody, let me bring on my friends and let's get started. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode on the lounge. I have another girlfriend edition for you today. We are talking today about jealousy. We're talking today about love and what we do to keep things hot in long-term relationships, or what we do to keep our libido and our pleasure and our sex drive going between relationships and wherever else we go today. So I have my girlfriends with me again today. And as you probably remember from previous episodes, we're going by our code names. So here is Venus Ruby.
Hi.
And Cosmos. Hi. And Yoni-san. So welcome back, everybody. And our first question today is jealousy. So I will tell you guys that my first introduction to jealousy was in my 20s when I was in an open relationship, a poly relationship then, and it was with a male and a female, and we were kind of just like a close-knit unit that was like generally just together, and then all of a sudden we were doing more openness, and the male and the female, found like they started getting more and more time together without me. And so like in any like triad relationship, there's like the individual relationships, of course, and then there's the unit. And we all had like equal time. And then there was this moment where it just like started fading away. Like me. Like I started fading away. And there was more time that it was like without being talked about or discussed. It was them hanging out on like the time that was like once upon a time, my time. And I had no idea what the fuck to do with those feelings. Like it was like jealousy meets with like rage. And it was very interesting because I think the biggest thing that I was feeling around the time was like all of those emotions, but then I would like, there was a lot of self-shame that would happen because then I was almost like, well, now I'm bad for feeling jealous. And now I'm bad for feeling angry. So I think that was like one of the biggest learning lessons for me was like how to have a feeling like that and how to just understand that sometimes that is a normal human experience. And I don't experience a lot of jealousy now, but if it does come up in passing, it's like, it's much more that. I think it's much more in passing because of actually going through that and like experiencing like, oh, this is what this feeling is. It's not bad or wrong. And because I don't shame it or shame myself, it can just be like something I notice that just like then doesn't hold in my body. So it was like I think it was very like educational for me, but very, it was just trauma. It was just like there was a lot of trauma around that relationship and a lot of feeling of rejection in that time.
Did it
Yeah.
your confidence for a while in relationships?
It really didn't I wouldn't say it shake my confidence in relationships, but it certainly made me not very interested in that configuration again. You know, it certainly made me realize like that was just too messy of an emotional configuration for me.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Were you able to talk about it with the other two? Like, was there an allowance or safety for there to be an open dialogue about it?
Or closure, even?
No, there really wasn't. I mean, I think we were so young and we didn't have any, that was before I studied like anything on communication styles or any of that. So I think we didn't know how to have those hard conversations. And I do think it would have been easier, you know, if we were at least able to like name it and like name like, wow, this, you know, this may be where it is, like, but there's still hurts and, you know, if there was a level of like actual care, but I think it was just like the newness of those types of feelings and nobody, you know, I don't have like any hard feelings for them. Like nobody knew how to navigate those feelings and the complexity of it. So
It's a big thing.
yeah, it was.
Yeah, it was dynamic. And I think what you said is really huge. Had there maybe been space or skill or know-how even, right? You were young. So it makes sense it wasn't there, but just the importance of naming
Yeah.
first for yourself in any situation what it is we're feeling, but then being able to name it in the context of relationship, I think is huge, and freeing ourselves from not so readily hooking in or overly identifying with whatever story we're creating around, especially jealousy. That's an icky thing to feel, and I don't like I'm not going to feel it, or I'm mad if I'm feeling this, right? But yeah. So it seems like
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think there's always like two different sides of any emotional thing. It's like we feel the emotion, and then they're like it's so easy to add the shame and the guilt on top of the emotion versus just allowing the emotion to have its space and being okay with feeling it for a little while. So
being okay with feeling it for a little while.
yeah.
Yeah, it's strange when I think about jealousy and I don't experience it very often. I can't remember the last time I felt jealous, honestly. Yeah, it probably happens more with friends than my romantic relationship. And that's more back to like, you know, am I worthy enough, or all that stuff that's not really about jealousy, right? But when I think about jealousy, it's like a fruitless emotion, and I don't give it the time, which maybe now I'm feeling like I should let it trickle in a little bit just to see what it has to teach me.
That's interesting. I love that curiosity. I really do. Like all these reflective prompts and just like getting us to tap into these older experiences just has me sitting here wondering like how much of the human experience is spent looping in these painful cycles just because we don't communicate or advocate for ourselves or the people that we love in those really raw and vulnerable moments, right? It's like only in these times of reflection where we can be like, oh, like, you know, we've come a long way now. We're more anchored in who we are. We're more confident. But yeah, it's like those times where we just like we could have spoken up for ourselves and we didn't, and we hold on to that for such a long time.
It's really avoid that uncomfortable feeling.
So much of the human experience.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think jealousy is on that throne of like some of the more or like anger, but jealousy is like the energy of it is, I think, on, in my experience, the spectrum of like it's one that like I want to avoid, or I don't really want to. If I'm feeling it's like, okay, I can be quick to try to bypass it or use my mind to be like, oh well, blah blah blah, I shouldn't feel this way, or override it. versus actually just letting myself be like, oh, I'm feeling jealous. Yeah. Okay. Interesting. Curious. Like what you said, like giving it, there is likely maybe some, not to hook into it, but to actually just be with it with less resistance. Like another emotion that's easier for me to be with, even if it is there are some more challenging emotions that are more easy for me to be with versus jealousy. There is some sort of ickiness that I feel or that I have definitely associated with it.
Yeah, like we don't go to our friends and say, I'm feeling really jealous. Like it's such an embarrassing emotion. I always feel that way even to say out loud. Yeah. But that said, I don't experience a jealousy. I'm just... You said it like, yeah.
Yeah, it's like the concept of these emotions and like how we process them and how what we allow is so interesting from a standpoint of, I'm thinking of an example. I made a video about shame, a YouTube video about shame and sexual shame, and their comments were very interesting. And it's always fascinating to me who says what, but there was somebody that had some pretty strong comments about shame has a purpose. And I think that person like missed the point of what I was talking about, but I think this person also had a really good point that like applies here, which is like this person's point was shame is teaching us that we are in alignment with something that that's good for us or is not. And I think that's the good part of shame. And of course, there's the other side of shame where it's like self-deprecating.
Yeah.
But it's like, so to take something like that and like apply it to jealousy, I think is like a similar type of thing of like, where is that line between this is a teacher around what feels good, what doesn't feel good versus now this is something that is taking over life and is actually like detrimental.
Yeah.
And I think there's a line.
Yeah. Well, I like that. I mean, when I think of shame, I think, okay, when we are internal in our shame, that feeds it. The shadow, the keeping the closed doors, that's going to feed the shame. Versus it is when we can be witnessed in safe capacity, whether it be a partner, a lover, therapist, coach, friend, somewhere that if light is shined on shame, it really supports it in softening and letting go and being moved. And so just you bringing up that analogy makes me care. I'm like, okay, so in relationship to then jealousy, like, yeah, could I share it if I'm feeling like, I'm feeling jealous in this friendship, like, I really feel like contraction in my heart. But I'm like, what would that be like to share to the friend? And could they hear that? And could that, and would that help in the unwinding? Because then it's just not internalized and my mind's trying to like overpower or override. Right? Which isn't true, like is creating more disconnection, I think. Wow. Yeah. So curious.
Yeah. Anybody have anything else to share? When they think about jealousy in a sexual or romantic relationship, the reason that I have an aversion to it or maybe just, I hadn't thought about jealousy, honestly, until you brought up this question. And then I really spent some time with it. But to me, it's like the ownership aspect, right? Of like, this is my friend, this is my partner, this is whatever. And because I don't feel that in my relationship, and we've talked about that, my partner and I, right? Like, it's not possible for me to fulfill everything for him, and he's not going to be everything for me. And that's why we have friends, right? So like this book that I want to talk about, I'm going to go to my friend or like get that somewhere else. And if my partner doesn't feel fulfilled and is going after someone else, and I have the feeling of jealousy, that's giving me information about our relationship, right? Like what's missing. That's really important. What's a want versus a need, right? Like we have an understanding that we may be attracted to other people, that we will be attracted to other people. That's just natural, right? And it's come up over the many years that we've been together. But we don't necessarily need that to be fulfilled in our relationships, right? Like sometimes that's just desire, or it's telling us something like, this person has this, can we incorporate that into our relationship somehow? So I think we've been able to navigate outside of jealousy by being really honest about our sexual attraction to other people or what we might be missing in our partnership.
Sounds like leading with curiosity too. Just letting that be part of the exploration of monogamy. Like, how can you just remain curious in all aspects of life and let that be the leading force, rather than being restrictive or thinking that you can't have something because you're in long-term partnership.
Sure. Yeah, and I wouldn't even say we're monogamous in the way that confines a relationship, right? That's like, when I think about monogamy, it's a stifling term to me, right? That's like, you can't look at another person, you can't like have desires out of this relationship. And so I wouldn't even label myself monogamous, even though I'm in a committed relationship where I only have sex with one person. But that, I don't know, it feels like a dead term to me, where jealousy could flourish because you're being confined into this really unnatural, like, this person is everything kind of relationship.
Wow. Yeah, that's exactly the reason I renamed my Libido Club to the Hot and Modern Monogamy Club, was actually to differentiate between like the traditional monogamy, which I think has all of those feelings, and like, what does it mean in this day and age for like, what is the modern version of monogamy? How is it, like, how does it look where we can actually be honest and say like, yeah, that's a beautiful person. There are beautiful people in the world. There are, like, every human has more attraction. Every human is going to need, even in monogamy, other relationships, and like that being okay versus like you said, this, how can monogamy be like supportive and hot and novel and full of desire without being restrictive?
It's monogamy. Yeah, it makes me wonder just like if everything in life is actually just a spectrum. Like even jealousy. I love the conversation of jealousy, and Ruby, I've really been just reflecting on something you had said in the very beginning of just like jealousy on the throne or something to that effect. And it just made me wonder, and again, just feel curious about all of these like seemingly negative emotions that we experience as humans just being rewritten and reanalyzed and redefined in our modern day lives to just be these interesting teachers. Like, jealousy is information. Like, what is it showing me about myself? Or what is it showing me about how I'm showing up in these relationships, rather than having it to be this this like defining thing about who I am and what I'm all about.
Yeah. So here's a curious, because I so 1000% agree with that, right? And I think that we tend to like have more of that like the both and perspective that brings it in, more of the grayer versus black and white. But I'm curious, like, how are ways that you or anyone, how do you find yourself in really practical ways around jealousy or other things in your primary partner relationship or friendships, however it shows up? How do you find yourself in the moment really being able to see this? It's like all fine and dandy, right, when we talk about it, but when the trigger is there, to like see the spectrum or feel more the both and.
You're just reminding me of the story. Wow. Okay. Of jealousy that I experienced that I completely forgot about in my current relationship. And this was many years ago, which is probably why I forgot about it. Thank you for bringing this up. When I was first with my partner, we were at an event with some of his very long-term friends, and there was a woman there that I found out later my partner had slept with. Like, as a one-off, it was they were both mourning, M-O-U-R, mourning, and like it was born out of that, right? So like they stayed friends. It wasn't romantic, but when I saw them the next time, they hugged, and I saw her like rub his back in a really familiar way, and I remember feeling jealous of like, oh, she's known him intimately in the way that I've known him intimately, and she's still in his life, and all these feelings came up. And how we navigated that, of course, was talking about it like adults. Like, I had these feelings come up, and like talking about what she means to him, and that honestly, that's all it took for me to like let that go.
Yeah.
Because just knowing like how he feels about it, and like him and I being truly honest about these big feelings as adults, were like, that's what did it learn.
Yeah, but you make it seem like, oh, like we're adults, so we had the conversation, but it also could have been just as quote unquote easy or it was just a one moment to ignore it and try to like, just overpower, right? But like, Yeah, so I think it's a really beautiful example of no, like I had this strong emotion come up just because it was like, okay, contact to the back. I'm going to share it with my partner. I'm going to let him in on what's happening within me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the next time I saw her, I made it a point. She's very cool too. Like, and it's part like gorgeous and like all the things, right? And I remember making it a point to know her because otherwise that jealousy could really bubble, right? Without like being connected in some way. And so it all worked out great. But it's good to be reminded that this jealousy happens even if it's not in the forefront of my mind. Mm-hmm.
What your story really makes me think about is how much personal responsibility we have. And this was actually what I was thinking about in response to your question, Ruby. Jealousy, just like anything else, it's a choice. We can choose to tap into that energy, or we can choose something different. We can choose to be in competition with women, or we can choose to be in celebration with women. And we always have that choice in every situation all the time. And it doesn't mean that you make the higher choice. In this case, like being in celebration over competition all the time. But yeah, it's like we can choose whether or not we want to let those feelings and emotions take over.
No.
Yeah, it's interesting. Jealousy doesn't feel like, I mean, I feel like I make the choice, but then jealousy feels like one of those things that if we were to choose, we would never choose that. But that I
So it's more like instinct.
Yeah, or like it's a spark, and maybe you have no choice about that part. But you're saying you get to choose how to navigate.
How to it's the response.
Yes. Thank you for clarifying that. Not that the jealous feeling won't come up, but you get to choose how you navigate through the world with that.
And what that is spatial, and
Exactly.
it means about you and your ego.
Mm-hmm. I always associate the feeling of jealousy, for me personally, of being less than something. And it, like for me, I'm using the word competition. Maybe that's not how it resonates for everyone. And the way I try and just quell some of those harder feelings is to remember that I'm a flavor, and you're a flavor, and you're a flavor, and you're a flavor. And all the flavors are delicious and wonderful and desirable, and different people enjoy different flavors, and different flavors resonate at different points in our life. And like we're all worthy of love and being desired. And yeah, it just feels like more interesting to think of it that way.
I think you're right about the competition part too, because as women we're trained, right?
Oh yeah,
from way early, to compete with each other, and I'm sure that's where a lot of it comes from. And like that feeling that I had towards my partner was definitely like, does he like me more than her, or you know, like, am I better than her, or all of that? But that's not really. He could be with that person, right? Which brings us back to the main point of this question, which is if my partner is happier with someone, or I'm happier with someone, that we have this agreement that we're going to live that truth, right? No matter what it means for our relationship, because why would we be unhappy together, right? Just for the sake of not being jealous or disrupting our monogamous relationship. Yeah.
There's a term in the open relationship world that's used a lot. It's a word that's not anything to do with that setting, but it's used more in that setting than I've heard it used other places, which is compersion. Do you guys know that word? It's a word that basically means taking so much personal pleasure in somebody else's pleasure. I even heard it used financially recently, like financial compersion. So it's like, oh, you see somebody that's at a better financial place, and rather than being like jealous or like comparing or having envy, of course these things can come up, but then it's like, what do you do with that? Well, how quickly can it be like, oh, wow, I can actually be so joyous and feel so much pleasure that somebody gets to live that flavor of a life. Which is easier said than done, I think, in a lot of ways. But that's what I think about when you're talking about you and your partner around, like, where is this level of compersion? And even with, like, jealousy in general, like, how can we see something? And, like, to your point of, like, what do we do with it? How do we respond? How can we like move and respond in a way where it's like not making it wrong, not shaming? Maybe it's information about what we do want in our life and, more, and maybe there's action, but how can we also in the moment like move to feel a sense of joy for something else in the world? And like easier said than done, but a lot of benefits from like living life in that state, I think, of just being so joyous for the joy in other people. Mm-hmm.
Well, since it's the podcast about sex and pleasure, I'm curious for you, Dr. D, because I think to be able to orient in that way, or even have the capacity to have the choice to choose how you're going to respond versus reacting out of jealousy or whatever's being triggered, to be in that place of joy, I would imagine, I think a person would need to be experiencing a good amount of pleasure in their life, sexual or non-sexual. Can you speak to that, Dr. D?
I can. Thank you, Venus Ruby. I mean, my feeling on that is like, this is back to, I told you one of my favorite statements offline, which is pleasure is not just about desire, but something we require. And I think this is so related to that, because I think there's
that line again.
Pleasure is not just about desire, but something we require. I can feel you really taking it in right now. But I think there's so much to be said about that, because when it comes to this idea of being able to experience more compersion, like, and how do we do that? And I think the more that we are filled up in our own body and our nervous system is regulated, because any of these things that we're talking about, jealousy and shame, but jealousy is the point of this episode. One of the things that I think helps us co-regulate or self-regulate is the ability for our nervous system not to like launch us into outer space like mine did when I was in my 20s, around like, okay, how do we have these feelings and actually sit with them and not feel like we're in this fight or flight driven place? And I think we do that when our nervous system's regulated. And what we see with oxytocin, if you look at like studies on oxytocin around like people talk about like the 20-second hug, for example, and if you look at 20-second hug versus orgasm and the amount of oxytocin, like a 20-second hug is going to give you like raised blood levels, maybe 20, 30, 40%. Orgasm's going to raise blood levels of oxytocin like 200, 300, 400, 500%. So when we see that oxytocin is like one of the most regulating things for getting us into that nervous system, calm, relaxed, regulated state, that's where pleasure of all types, and especially things like bringing in like something like orgasm that can, really 200 times, or 200%, I should say, to 500% increase our blood levels. I do think there's that direct relationship like you bring up. So I love your question, because there's that direct relationship, I think, of being able to feel so much pleasure and co-regulating or self-regulating your nervous system, and therefore being able to handle, jealousy and work through jealousy and these emotions in a non-reactive kind of way.
Yeah. Do you think when we feel jealousy that we should have an orgasm? That's what I was saying. The takeaway is more orgasm. It's how I'm getting, That seems like.
That's highly doctor recommended.
I haven't had enough this week. For real. I was working.
I have this note on my mirror that says love or fear, you decide every day. And for me, that feels like it. Yeah, that's very clear, right? With jealousy, like if you're happy, if you're happy and you're choosing love, then seeing someone you love be happy, even if it's with someone else, like that's so clear. And the opposite is clearly fear, right? Like those are the two opposite. Not that I always choose the right one, but yeah, I think that's how.
Well, it's not wrong to choose fear. I don't believe. I think it's part of our human experience. I think that the higher vibration, the more growth-oriented choice, would be love. I think, do I intend to always want to come from love? Yes, but I don't think I don't believe in making myself wrong if I do come from a place of fear. Instead, how quickly can I notice that? And if I need to do some repair, do repair or resolve what needs to happen. But I love that quote. I want to write, and I love how you ended it with love or fear every day, or what is, I like every day.
Well, actually, the end of, I like the way that you're framing this though, because I've been like, I do tend to judge myself for choosing fear.
Yeah.
But I like the compassion that you're. But the end of the quote actually is compassion is an evolved state of being.
Compassion is an evolved state of being.
Yeah, that's the second part of the quote, which makes me think, yeah, I could feel fear, and that would be okay.
And
it teaches me something, probably.
Yeah, it comes back to like the whole spectrum, right? And these are all beautiful opportunities of like checking in for ourselves of like, oh, wow, I noticed I responded or reacted out of fear in this circumstance, or am having hard time being compassionate with myself. Could those be opportunities to, in our super busy, full lives, take a pause? I mean, I'm saying this for myself too, right? And like take a breath and come back in and like, oh, okay, could it be as simple as enhancing my pleasure and try to increase my oxytocin level in my blood? Can I go have an orgasm and come back and see, oh, can I have more compassion, or can I come from love? I mean, it doesn't have to be an orgasm.
I really like that. Yeah, maybe.
Take more. The carrot, the medicine, and it question.
It's so interesting. We always, as humans, it's like this and that. Like everything is so black and white, and that's like the nature of duality. I heard this amazing quote today on the drive here that the stars in the sky shine brighter because they're surrounded by darkness.
Yeah.
And it's like you really need the darkness to experience the light. You need fear to experience the love. You need the jealousy to be able to experience the celebration and the connection, as you so beautifully shared your story earlier. It's like it's all part of the same experience.
So now you're talking about our shadow. Our shadow hours, like the cop for wicked. Wow. Yeah, I don't know if we have time for that. Hey, what's that episode? But yeah.
It is like the thing I'll say on that is it's like the fundamental principle of Chinese medicine, of Taoism, is like the Tai Chi symbol, the yin yang symbol, where you see like the white and then it goes into the black. But in the white swirl, there's a black dot. In the black swirl, there's a white dot. And black is representing more the night, the yin, the white's representing more the day, the yang. But the idea is like in anything in life, there's always that moment of like that darkness, or there's always that moment of the light, which is exactly what you're saying. It's like that concept is deep in a lot of our wisdom traditions.
Yeah.
No,
I think I need to update my mirror sticky as a yin and yang with love and fear as like, yeah, two pieces. I really liked what it. Oh, also, I'm not. But I will rip it up the second I go.
In my head, I was going to ask you to repeat it. I was like, I want to write that down.
Oh.
I was more just like, I was more on it's because I do believe it's a choice, and what do we want to choose? I just don't think it's wrong or
to feel it.
To if the decision was in the past to choose fear, it's not wrong.
Yeah, I like that.
It's part of human. The opportunity is, what do we do from there? Yeah.
So another question, ladies, is while we're talking about this concept of let's use pleasure and orgasms to help us with jealousy or emotions, how have you ladies between relationships, like when you've been single, how have you, and I know it's been longer for, some people than others, but how have you found that you've been able to stoke your libido? Or even in times like, because I think in relationships it ebbs and flows, and sometimes there can be situations in relationships where that's not happening with a partner. So in either scenario, like where it's like just that any scenario in life, I guess is what I'm saying, where there's not that reliability of that partner to kind of keep that spark going, how have you found within yourselves to keep your libido going? Have you found any tricks or tools?
Well, this is true, I think, whether I'm in a relationship or not, but I really value masturbation. Just ask. Yeah, and I'm aware of how this would sound differently if I were a man saying this exact same thing, but I'm pretty good at masturbating. And I feel like I give myself a different orgasm no matter what, even if my partner is like so dialed and really can make me orgasm to the max, it's still different than the like very relaxed masturbation that I give myself. And now, being a person with a small child at home, even though I'm in a monogamous relationship, or like a long-term relationship, we don't have as much sex as we would like to.
Yeah.
And so we have to sneak those little bits in too, right? Of like self-pleasure and staying in that like yummy, sensual pleasure place, right? Or like places that I might get that too that's not sexual, but still makes me feel like sexy and alive. Like going dancing, for example, which is inherently maybe not a sexual experience, but it makes me like helps my libido stay higher. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a good here. Yeah.
Well, I would agree with that for myself, certainly. Like developing a very consistent and enjoyable self-pleasure practice has been a huge component of keeping my libido high. I'm also in a long-term monogamous relationship, and there's cycles and there are seasons of more sex, more intimacy, less sex, less intimacy. And at least in my relationship, it's about really landing into those seasons. And I have to keep this in check for myself too, because I can get into, again, that comparison mode of like, oh, we used to do this way, or we used to do this so much more frequently. And because I'm measuring myself now against what used to be, I can get into these cycles of feeling like, oh, it's not as good, it's not as enjoyable, it's not what I desire. And what I'm really learning to practice at this stage in my life is leaning into all the yumminess of just what is and what I'm creating now, and not having what I used to experience be the defining thing. So in my partnership, really learning to love the subtleties of intimacy that is not just penetration. Like I have learned to redefine sex for myself and within my partnership, where having sex is not just being penetrated. And it's taken me a really long time to get there, but even just in redefining what that means for myself, it allows me to enjoy in such a greater, more deep way the ways that my partner and I do share time together and do express intimacy. And I would say that having that part of our sensual relationship evolve, where it's like even just sensual massage, if we're just sitting on the couch watching TV and we're like giving each other a hand massage or a foot massage, like that is so sexually fulfilling for me, where I don't necessarily like need to feel like, oh, because it's okay that we're not having sex in this moment, like it doesn't have to be about that.
Mm-hmm. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think for me too, the sex, I don't necessarily have to have an orgasm too. Like you were talking about the journey, right? It's not just about getting to the end. Like I can have wonderful sex and never have an orgasm the whole time, right? And how can that be part of our lives too, right? Like I love that intimacy, which leads to better sex, right? When you do get to have sex and you've had all these intimate moments building up to it, right? I think it enhances that too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like living in foreplay.
Right?
Yeah, it's kind of fun to think about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just wanted to comment real fast. I asked this question when in leading a live workshop. How do you define sex? And everybody in the chat was penetration, intercourse, penetration. And that was actually one of my teaching points, because I think it's so important. So I just wanted to name that around like the more that I think we can get away from this is the way sex has to look, and it takes so much pressure off. It takes so much anxiety off. I think it can help in situations where there's erectile dysfunction or vaginal dryness, or just people are missing each other, or there's overwhelm, or so many things. But if we can open that to be yeah, that is wonderful, but there's all these other ways that we can sexually connect and share this space. And I think it can change everything. That little orientation.
Yeah. Totally. It's huge. Yeah.
How about you? Like, what are some of your secrets?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm appreciating hearing and like agreeing with what everyone's saying. And as someone who tends to have long periods of being single, and so not with a sexual partner, and as someone who would identify as a pretty sexual person, it's an interesting journey of, okay, how do I be with the libido? How do I be with my sexual energy? Sometimes I have found in the past, and I'm orienting currently differently to this, but one of my struggles has been, I'm always been like, wow, everything would be so much easier if I was having sex right now. So I could have that release, so I could have that contact, around, my creativity. And so how do I be with my sexual energy and move it through me and can have a release and masturbate and orgasm? Or could I've been doing this more in the last couple of months. Can I tap into that energy and cultivate something and create something from it? But that's not always been the easiest practice. Typically, it's been a lot of self-pleasure and masturbation. For me, that's been a huge part. And I think I had so many very beautiful, profound, deeply healing, like whole spectrum. I mean, it sounds wild, but I remember one self-pleasure session and I was like, this is coming up. But I felt like I was like doing deep ancestral healing for my whole matriarchal lineage of women who weren't allowed to feel pleasure for pleasure's sake. And so I know that's not the question, so I don't know why that came up. But I think for somebody who has had lots of sense of being single and keeping connection with my sensuality and sexuality is a very important thing to me. And so, I used to have like a regular self-pleasure practice. Like it was a big part of like my, like you would think, a daily meditation. I'm not currently in that phase where like that's like an intentional thing I'm doing to move things through, but it's just more organic. But I love that you said dancing. I think dancing's huge. Honestly, too, for me, like what keeps my libido high is moving my freaking body, like strength training. When I'm regularly, consistently doing some sort of strength training movement regimen, and for me, that literally feels like I'm juicing my body. I'm juicing my fascia. I'm moving my joints through full range of motion under load. That turns me on.
Yeah.
I get very turned on by that. And that keeps, then there's like more circulation, more blood flow pulsing through my system physiologically. It helps me feel much more sensual, sexual, connected to my libido, whether I'm single, whether I'm with a partner.
And that's like what you were talking about, right? The pleasure for the sake of it and not being sexual. And like the hug that you were talking about, like if I get a lot of good, yummy hugs from my friends, that not in a sexual way, but like that enhances my libido just because I feel good in my body, right? And magically, probably just need to more hug, touch each other more platonically, but so exactly.
Yeah, I think females, like that's one thing of there's just so much more of a tendency, I think, for females to like rely on each other that way. And it's not, I think, a common thing for men in our society. I don't really know what my point of that is, just other than just the need for the awareness of, of bringing this pleasure into life. And like you, I have found that movement is one of the biggest things, like snowboarding, running, lifting, dancing, our sensual dance classes, pole dancing, like anything that gets me into my body and into the flow state. And then like the last thing I'll say is just then like I have to give a shout out to masturbation too, because like it's obviously really important. So but for sure, yeah. What were you gonna say?
Well, just you saying sensual dance, I just want to say one brief thing because that feels so important. And I won't go into all of it, but Diamond and I used to be a very huge part of our regular practice. It was a form of movement called sensually embodied dance. But basically, just saying this because if any listener, like I think you could just, the importance of turning on a song that feels yummy, maybe sexy to you, and how does in dim lights. Ideally, just do this first with yourself, could be with a partner, but like, how does your body want to move? And I think that that's a question that we don't often invite for ourselves of how does my body want to move? What would feel so yummy? What would feel so sexy for me? I think that's a big key. in keeping our libido strong and keeping our connection with our own sexuality and sensuality in any phase, right? Because it will change and ebb and shift. And that feels important to like stay in connection.
Yeah.
And can be simple. This doesn't necessarily mean it's easy practice, but it can be so simple. Yeah. That's my plug for dance.
Something you can do when you're at home and live it. Yeah, that'll our flaws.
Masturbate, have sex, or whatever you want to do after.
It's great foreplay.
Yeah. Something else I want to mention too, Ruby, something you had said made me think of this. Sexual energy is very similar to creative energy, right? And so like sexual energy or having sex designed for procreation, right? Like bringing humans into the world. Well, creative energy, like you can birth other things into existence just through your creative pursuits. And so I think that at different stages in our life, it ebbs and flows. Sometimes we might be more in that like sexual frequency, and other times we're in that more creative frequency in our lives, in our business, designing our houses, being with our children, what have you. And that is just as important and as valuable as being very sexual.
Totally. And linking that to making that distinction for an individual of, oh, this is how I'm being creative, and can I feel the sexualness around that, even if it's not a sexy act? Yeah. Because that makes it feel more delicious.
And Diane, you and I talked about this years ago, the transmutation of sexual energy and like when to harness it versus like hold